Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your project management tutor and entrepreneurship tutor, Professor Henry Buisa of Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Today, I'm going to talk about the project cycle or the project life cycle. This is my second lecture on project management. The first lecture, I simply introduced project management. These lectures are meant for students of project management. Yes, project life cycle. A life cycle is a series of stages through which something such as an individual, culture, or manufactured product passes during its lifetime. You can see here butterfly, for example. Butterfly life cycle starts with the eggs, probably laid on a leaf, then a caterpillar or larva is developed, that is the second stage, and then chrysalis or pupa is developed and into a butterfly, which will definitely die. So that's a life cycle. I repeat, a life cycle is a series of stages a living thing goes through during its life. All plants and animals go through life cycles. Here is the human life cycle. Fertilized egg develops into a fetus, which develops into a baby, into a child, into a teenager, an adult, old age, and we say rest in peace. So that is a human life cycle. Now, as an introduction to the project cycle, we first recall that a project is a series of activities aimed at bringing about early specified, or rather clearly specified objectives within a defined time period and with a defined or definite budget. This we saw in our last lecture when I was introducing project management. So, the various steps or stages a project takes from conception to completion is known as the project cycle. Now, project life cycle, PLC, please don't confuse this with product life cycle in business, in commerce. PLC is project life cycle in this case. It is a tool. It is a project management tool. So, PLC, project life cycle, is a management tool to make it easier to manage the project sequence. The choice of phases vary from industry to industry, and the PLC will vary to suit the needs of the participants. Different project managers choose different PLCs depending on the nature of the task. Engineering, software development, etc., etc. Now, much as there are a number of phases of project life cycle depending on which industry, what purpose, there could be many, 10 plus, but the basic project life cycle has 4 stages. So here are the basic project life cycle stages. Yes, there is project initiation, project planning, project execution, and project closure. Those are the 4 basic stages of a project life cycle. Yes, that therefore becomes phase 1, the project initiation. Phase 2, project planning. Phase 3, project execution. And phase 4, project closure. And at phase 1, it is project definition. At phase 2 is detailed planning. And at phase 3 is monitoring and control. And finally, post-implementation review. So these are the basic stages in project lifecycle. Let's look at them in a little detail. Phase 1, project initiation. Here, feasibility study is conducted to identify the primary problem the project will solve and whether the project can deliver a solution to that problem. This is feasibility. Is it feasible? Is it doable? Here, a charter or project initiation document is created that outlines the vision, the objectives, and goals of the project, identify the high-level scope of the project, and define the product or service the project will deliver. At this stage also, we identify key stakeholders. We shall be talking about stakeholders in a separate lecture. So that was phase 1. Phase 2, project planning, the very critical, most critical phase, because it lays down the roadmap to the project. This is defining the work to be done and figuring out how to accomplish it. It's goal setting, project schedule, project scope definition, plus the cost, quality, resources, and timelines. The work breakdown structure, which again we shall look at in details later. The deliverables of the project or for the project. Here, you create a project plan, assign team members and other resources to the various tasks, and build a detailed project timeline. Create a risk mitigation plan to identify potential risks and develop a strategy to minimize them. This is planning. You get the planning wrong, the project will go wrong. You get the planning right, the project will succeed. And that's why we're calling this a very most critical phase of the cycle. Then we have phase 3, project execution. We are now turning planning into action. The key project management steps here involved in this phase include assigning the team and other resources to the project tasks and begin work in the planned manner. Provision of necessary guidance to the team on how tasks should be completed. This is mainly done by the project manager. Monitor progress of the team. Communicate with the stakeholders on a regular basis to ensure that the project deliverables are acceptable. And then we come to the final phase 4, project closure. This is the final phase of the cycle. Remember, we said this is the basic cycle. There are cycles with more phases than 4. Here we conduct the end of project review or retrospective. We analyze the project performance, successes and failures. We prepare reports which include lessons learned. When we are going to do another project, what can we learn from the previous project? The document project closure is prepared and the project delivered to stakeholders. The project members are released to go back to their routine duties. Yes, But look, in the middle, we have project monitoring and control, tracking the progress of project tasks, measuring budgets, timeline and quality performance, reviewing deliverables and taking any corrective action. You see, this monitoring and control is sometimes put as phase 4 in some models, meaning it becomes before closure to make the 5 phases. But here, we want to say that monitoring and control, or monitoring and evaluation, should be an ongoing exercise. As you initiate the project, there is feedback, monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and what should be an ongoing process, an ongoing exercise. But like I said, in some models, monitoring and evaluation becomes a separate phase put at phase 4 after project execution, coming before the project closure. So here we have elected to put it in the middle of the cycle because monitoring and evaluation is an ongoing process and every other phase may be monitored and evaluated also. Now, the graph you can see is a typical, representation of the activities or the time and cost and the staffing level required in a project. This is a typical project life cycle. Time. As time goes on, we start with the initiation and the cost and staffing levels are low, but they increase with the time. The planning phase, they increase. Execution and control, there is also even more time. And the closure, again, less time. This is, a typical or an ideal, let me say, an ideal situation that should be that staffing and time are greatest during the execution and control phase. We can see them. Project life cycles sometimes may overlap. Look, the initial defining, it starts and then it ends. Defining the goals, specifications, tasks, responsibilities. But look, the next planning would have started like together. Planning is a look into the future. So setting a goal is already planning. So planning starts and continues. Even during execution, there is some planning being done because we have schedules, we have budgets, we have resources, risks, staffing, and etc., etc. So initiation and planning like start together, same as execution. Typically, we can separate them for simplicity, but the reality on the ground is that all those start, executing status reports, changes, quality, and there it is, execution beginning up to the end. And then the closing. Closing becomes now a standalone phase, which starts as execution is going towards the end. The closing, probably training the customer. If this project was being done for some customer, the training of the customer starts early enough before the project ends. Transfer documents are being prepared before it ends. Release resources evaluations, and again lessons learned. So these phases of the project life cycle could overlap. Let's go back. So the timing here. Typically, ideally, a typical project cycle initiation may take 10%, money, time. Planning may take 25%, implementation 60%, and closing 5%. But successful projects, as best examples show, successful projects initiation 20%, planning 30%, implementation 40%, and closing 10%. You see? So these are examples of, research has shown that these allocations are ideal, but doesn't mean that every project has to be allocated that way, because there are quite a number of factors that might affect the project. Now, let's look at two examples from global organizations. This is the World Bank. The World Bank project cycle has got, first, country assistance strategy, 2, identification, 3, preparation, 4, appraisal, 5, negotiations and board approval, implementation and supervision, 6, 7, implementation and completion, and 8, evaluation. I suggest that you can pause your video and study or look at the details of these stages that the World Bank goes through, or you can go check this source and get more details. And now we have the European Commission EC project cycle. We are now going to just look at the main documents and responsibilities that the EC uses. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stages: programming, identification, formulation, financing, implementation, and evaluation. Now, programming, there preparation of the EC programming documents, and then the national programming documents come together. In other words, if the EC is doing a project for, let's say, a country, that project must be within the country's national planning, strategic planning, and therefore those two stages documents match each other. That means the programming documents and the EC and the national programming documents are studied, of course, to identify a possible need and a possible project. And then in identification, there is first of all the pre-feasibility studies, and then decision which option to study further after stakeholder consultation. In other words, we can look at 2, 3, 4 and select which project is feasible in consultation stakeholders. And then we come to formulation. From pre-feasibility study, there is now a feasibility study and the formulation of the project, and then the draft financing proposal. And then the financing itself comes, the financial proposal, decision to fund the program, and financing agreement. And then implementation, progress and monitoring reports, decision to continue or to reorient the project, decision to extend the project. You see, when implementation, remember, we planned probably even last year, if it may be so. When implementation, a lot of water could have passed under the bridge. Home condition may have changed. Things, offices may have been changed. So progress and monitoring reports will reveal that, and there will be a decision to continue or to reorient the project. We know things like pestle, political, economic, all those environment within which the projects work, the SWOT analysis, the strengths, opportunities, and all that. Things could change, and therefore, in implementation, such documents may appear. And then, finally, the evaluation. Evaluation reports based on relevance, efficiency, effectiveness, impact, and sustainability. Was this project relevant? Was it efficient? Did we overuse resources, or did we optimally use the resources? Effectiveness. Were the results thorough? Did we achieve what we wanted? The impact. What impact has it? What changes has this project brought? And then when the donor moves out, will it be sustainable? All these are checked in evaluation. And then the decision about using the results in the future projects are also drawn. So this is specifically the European Commission. Yes, in this lecture, we have just focused on project cycle, project life cycle. And we have seen that the basic stages could be 4 or are 4, but different organizations, different industries, different projects may require different phases. So it is not, a one fits all. It will depend on the project, on the donor, on the industry, how many phases the project will take. Good. Now, for your review, for your homework, think about a project that you have undertaken, whether with your studies, whether at home, at work, or anywhere else, and then identify the phases of that project. Did you follow 4 phases? Did you follow more than 4 phases? Think about it, and we shall cover it elsewhere. Thank you for listening, and watch out for the next lecture. Thank you. If you liked this video, please share, like, subscribe, and please leave a comment. For updates on my other works, my other videos, and anything else, please click on the links below.